Right, well, here we are. I'm Matt Line, and I'm going to try a new format today. It's going to be a lunch and learn. And the subject today is going to be incomplete information, irrational behavior, and hubris. And the reason I'm bringing up these topics today is because none of us have or ever will have complete information, and still somehow we have to go through life and make decisions, etc. So, what is the basis of these decisions that we make? Why would we make the decisions that we do? Why do some people go and seek and get more and more and more information even when there's a diminishing return? And why do other people just go and make decisions with no information? I think that a lot of it has to do with impulsivity, a lot of it has to do with reliance upon feelings, a lot of it has to do with experience in making decisions. I mean, there's so much that goes into this that it's a very, very, it's a multifaceted thing, and I don't have a quick and easy answer. But I'm operating on the premise that insofar as we're human beings and insofar as we might not even know what's good for us, like we can know what we want in any given moment, maybe, I still think that it's possible for us to make the best decisions possible with the information that we have. That might be a tautology, because it is possible for us to make the best decisions possible means that we might not make the best decision, but there's no way for us to make it any better. So someone with perfect information might be able to make a better decision than we can, but that doesn't exempt us from the decision-making process because, well, if we don't make a decision, we're paralyzed. Or maybe the default decision is to rot away at home. I'm not quite sure how that works, but it's something like that. So ultimately, we run into the question, okay, is it better to spend the time and the effort and maybe the money that it takes to get more information or just to make a decision? So it's constantly, okay, is it better for us to collect the information and then decide, or is it better for us to decide and then wait until the next decision? And the question is one of marginal utility. So what's the marginal utility of getting more information versus making a decision now? And the answer to that question is, at least for me, I don't know. And so I tend to see if there's some suitable heuristic or a razor or something I can use to get me a result that's good enough. That's kind of one of my go-to things when dealing with something that isn't that's completely outside the realm of what I know, but I've gone and done my due diligence to collect information as much as I possibly can. And so I personally subscribe to the idea that if there's no major downside apparent, and if the thing is easily reversible, I tend to gravitate toward making the decision. Otherwise, I go into a more in-depth cost-benefit analysis and, well, then proceed based on what the results of that is. But all of that's done with incomplete information. So what are some suitable heuristics? Okay, so there's always the pleasure and pain one, but frankly, I'm not entirely convinced that maximization of pleasure is a good idea. And the reason is that pleasure is mediated by dopamine, and happiness is mediated by serotonin. Those are two completely different and often competing systems. Dopamine is the chemical that keeps you from ever being satiated, keeps you from ever being satisfied with anything. So if you go and you're reading a book that's interesting to you, that'll give you a dopamine hit. If you find something you were looking for, that will get you a dopamine hit. If you take a drug, that will, well, some of them are depressants and things like that, but many of these drugs will give you a dopamine hit, like opioids and things of that nature. So dopamine always leaves you wanting more, and the downregulation of dopamine receptors upon getting something means that you're always going to be craving a bigger hit. So I think that dopamine is good in terms of being, when properly used, can let you go and explore and gain pleasure from getting good things. But I would say that the serotonin system is one that we should definitely consider. I mean, a whole lot of the research has gone into the dopamine system, and advertisers and social media keep on trying to give you these hits so that you crave more and more and more and get your eyes on their product and buy it, right? But serotonin works such that you get something that gives you a serotonin hit and you don't want any more. It's like after you've eaten a meal and you feel full, rather than after you've eaten a meal and you feel hungry. Specifically for me, eating olives does that for me. Eating cheese does that for me. But if I eat a sugar shot, or I have too much of something like that, it leaves me completely empty. Part of that, of course, is low blood sugar that comes from the insulin, but part of it comes from the fact that I've gone and had a dopamine hit. My dopamine receptors get downregulated, and then I want some more. Of course, with that being said, I'll flat out let you know that I've decided to indulge in one of the retro Mountain Dews made with real sugar, and yeah, it's a dopamine hit. But I was chopping down trees all morning, so I'm feeling perfectly content and able to do this without going and getting any kind of sugar rush or crash. So I'm happy, and I'm enjoying it. And it's only one can and only 170 calories, and we'll see later this afternoon if it's been good for me or not. So, is there a suitable heuristic? I don't know. But pleasure and pain is definitely not one that I would look at too much. Certainly, maximizing pleasure by occasionally having a Mountain Dew real sugar is probably not a horrible idea. But if you go and you think about the things that give you serotonin, being able to have real relationships with real people. I mean, if you go and you think, okay, interaction on Facebook or on some social media site, that can give a dopamine hit because you can go and think about all these ideas and share them with other people. But if you're not actually interacting with others, a lot of this conversation is going to be dopamine mediated instead of serotonin mediated, and then you're just going to be left wanting after these conversations take place. So getting to spend real time with real people is important. Getting to eat satiating food, or not even eat necessarily too much at all, is good, because you're not going to be left craving crap. Pursuing meaningful goals, things that aren't transient. Ultimately, if you're going to make a razor out of this, you would say, okay, is pursuing these things that are transient good, something I should be aiming for? Well, no. It can be nice occasionally, but if that is your end, if that's your end in life is pleasure, you're going to be miserable. So go look at the ancients, go look at the things that people have known for millennia make people actually happy. Look at ancient proverbs, look at ancient things that have stood the test of time. I tend to read a lot of King Solomon myself. I think that his stuff is pretty good. And if you use that kind of a thing as a basis, then you can at least somehow line up your priorities such that you can pursue the things that are, high on your list and devote your time and energy to that. Now, if it comes to making more basic decisions like, do I buy this car or do I buy that car, then you can go and think, well, how do I collect the information that makes the most sense? And what metric am I going to measure this all by? I tend to go by the metric of, okay, are you buying a car for a toy or are you buying a car for transportation? Or maybe as a status symbol, right? And I'm not buying cars for toys and I'm not buying cars for status symbols, so I'm buying them for transportation. And so that means I'm attempting to maximize miles driven per unit cost. And so I think, okay, what does that mean? So that means you have to take into account fuel economy, you have to take into account how long you think the car is going to last, how much repair you need to do, how often you plan on filling the oil. And so you can go and do some back of the envelope arithmetic or do it in your head and figure out, okay, this is a range of what I can expect. And if this car gives me that and that car gives me that and they're all within, a certain tolerance of each other, then I pick the car that I like because of the color that it is, or I pick the car that I like because of whatever. You can go and throw something arbitrary in there that's just what you like as you go down the list of priorities and get all the really, really high ones out of the way. Look, I'm not going to try to buy a car that I think is going to cost me 30 cents a mile to drive in capital expenditures. I think that's stupid. Unless, of course, I really just need that transportation. Right, so just doing some basic arithmetic and trusting your best judgment. And if you don't have particularly good judgment, then, well, I don't know. Then enlisting somebody who does have better judgment, I guess, could help. So, enough on the subject of how to deal with incomplete information. Now, on to the real meat of it. We are not rational beings. We are not rational beings. We would be delusional to think that we are, regardless of how much of a thinker we happen to be. Because to be rational, it would mean that we're constantly, rationally pursuing the most rational goal that we could be pursuing at any given time, and that's just, it doesn't happen. We could be rationally pursuing irrational goals, or we could be irrationally pursuing rational goals, or irrationally pursuing irrational goals, or some combination of all those different permutations. That just doesn't, no. So we're not rational, and so it's okay to let emotion play some role in our decision making. It doesn't have to be always back of the envelope arithmetic causing us to make our decisions. I mean, it wasn't back of the envelope arithmetic that got me to drink this Mountain Dew. It was the fact that I wanted a Mountain Dew. And I knew that if I'm disciplined in the rest of the stuff that I consume today, I don't have to worry about this going and causing me too much trouble. Which leads to the next point, that it's okay to go for what you want as long as you aren't being immoral or unethical about it. So, my drinking this Mountain Dew isn't hurting anybody else. I mean, you might make the case that perhaps if I drink too many of these, then I might be more likely to die, and then I wouldn't be able to be a father. So you can think about those kinds of things, and that can inform you whether or not you're going to be a Mountain Dew drinker, or maybe somebody that just goes and consumes one occasionally, or maybe picks the zero sugar variety, or maybe doesn't want to have aspartame and so sticks to drinking coffee black, or abstains from caffeine entirely. It doesn't really matter, and I'm just using this as an example. You can fill in the blanks with whatever it is that you're making a decision about. This just happens to be an easy one to do because it's right here staring me in the face. And it's okay for you to change your mind about what you want. People do that all the time. If you go through life and you realize that the things that you thought were making you happy aren't, then don't do them. If you realize that there are things that might make you happy that you're not doing, then maybe you can do them. You don't have to be perfect, and you don't have to always have the answer, and you don't have to know everything. That's not part of the human condition and never has been. We are horribly irrational, and our saving grace, I suppose, in that regard is that we can modulate our actions very quickly. We can go and say, hey, that was a bad idea, I won't do it again. We can learn. And one of the best teachers is banging our head up against the wall. One of the best teachers is pain. One of the best teachers is problems. And so we can understand that these mistakes allow us to come into the realm of new information. We can constantly come upon this new information, and we learn it through our mistakes. As I mentioned in a previous video, moving forward in life will provide more information in higher resolution. I think I used the word granularity in that video, but it's resolution, granularity, same thing, or opposite thing. More information in a higher resolution than you would get by staying still. It's okay to make mistakes. They can wind up being the best learning opportunities in the world. Now finally, we'll talk about the subject of hubris, because there is a tendency for many thinkers to fall into hubris. We have likely gone and thought about things a lot. It's important to remember that we don't have all the information. Even more likely is the idea that where we would get the information that we actually need is somewhere that we don't like very much. After all, the places we don't like are the ones that we might not explore. So that means that there is all this stuff that's beyond our comfort zone, beyond the zone of what we've explored, beyond the zone of what makes us feel good. And so part of our exploration should be exploring the things that we don't want, hanging out with people we don't like, thinking about things we rather would not think about, etc. I'm thinking about how at work there are people with whom I get along really well, and there are people with whom I don't get along particularly well, and there are people that really rub me the wrong way. And invariably, it's been the case that if I keep open ears, and it doesn't happen all the time, but often it happens, that the people that I don't like very much and the people that drive me a bit crazy will give me information that the people that I do like might not even have on their radar. I'm not going to go into office politics, but it's one of these interesting things that when you go into a conversation with somebody that you don't like very much, it's very easy to stereotype what you think they're going to say based upon whatever has entered your head. And I know at least it is for me. Especially in conversations, because I tend to play conversations in my head before they happen. This person's likely to say this, so I'll respond this way, and this person's likely to say that, so I'll respond that way. But taking the time to be quiet and listen to people that you don't like can give you valuable pieces of information that will allow you to then conduct your own self better in the world. Or going to places that you would rather not be. I'm guessing that a lot of the people viewing this channel are probably INT somethings, or a lot of thinkers. I'm guessing there are probably lots of NFs as well. I don't actually know, but I'm just throwing out a guess that a lot of you tend to think about abstract things. A lot of you tend to think about abstract things, and so it might seem, well, unusual to go and try to deal with things that are way more tangible and way more concrete. Some people obviously can do this better than others, and then if you're one of the kinds of people that likes the concrete things, you like something that you can hold on to, well then congratulations for finding this channel, because I tend to talk a lot in terms of abstractions. So let's pretend like you are someone that likes abstractions. Going and picking up a skilled trade or a thing that you can do with your hands allows you to experience the world in a very different way than somebody who does it only cerebrally. If you're used to sucking in information, then work on outputting something. If you're used to outputting something, then work on sucking in something else. Pick the thing that you hate and do at least some of it, because you will grow a whole lot more as a human being and be more capable of making better decisions, and will be less likely to fall into hubris because you have a bigger box of tools to assimilate more information. Now, of course, if you go and you assimilate this more information, it's again likely for you to think that somehow I know better. But then we can always go back to the problem of incomplete information and realize that there is a very high likelihood that I don't know what I'm doing, and there's something for me to either A, learn, or B, gained by failing. So I can learn beforehand by simulating and thinking and planning, and also learn after the fact by failing. So that's about all I have to share today. It's a decently short lunch and learn, just like 20-some minutes or whatever. But I really hope that this helps those of you that both have issues with analysis paralysis, or maybe with making bad decisions. And I hope that this has given you at least some extra tools, or tools to use, or lenses to view the world, or something of that nature. Thank you guys very much for your time. And now I'm going to go and enjoy the rest of my lunch. Talk to you later. Bye.